Welcome to this quick start tutorial centered around the React framework. In the following videos, we'll be creating a live instance of a React app using the create React app command and be hosting a live example of the results on Heroku. We will also be creating a GitHub repository which will allow you to share your code. You should be able to follow along with this tutorial with basic knowledge of JavaScript and React. This is not a tutorial to teach you those skills, but the boilerplate code that we will be creating will allow you to build upon your React and MERN stack knowledge and ability. So let's get started. Special thanks to Brad Traversy at Traversy Media and Maximilian Schwarzmüller at Academind, whose tutorials have helped me greatly with my study of the MERN stack. I will leave a link to both of their channels in the description. We will be initializing a Node.js project to allow us to run server-side JavaScript, creating a server ready for hosting on Heroku. This is not strictly necessary to get a React app up and running, but it will allow us to build a fully functional MERN stack app that can be hosted on Heroku in the future. Creating a React frontend with the create React app command. Creating and adding a component within the React frontend for testing purposes. Configuring the package.json files on both the server side and within our frontend. Utilizing Git for version control, which will be required in order to push to GitHub and Heroku. Creating a GitHub account in order to be able to share your code with peers. Creating a Heroku account as well as installing the command line interface in order to be able to deploy to Heroku. You will need Node.js installed on your system in order to create React apps and to run JavaScript on the server side. Git installed on your system for version control and to be able to push your code to GitHub and Heroku. A GitHub account in order to share your code with peers. A Heroku account to push your code into production and to allow access of the app to users. Heroku command line interface to also be able to push your code into production and to work out any errors. And a code editor of your choice. I'll be installing Atom, but feel free to use any code editor or IDE you wish. All these installations are covered in this video. Let's get started by installing Node.js on the system. Open a browser and search Node.js. Go to the downloads and install whatever version is suitable for your operating system. I'm going to be using Windows, but I've already downloaded the file. Once the download is complete, go to the location where the file has been downloaded to and install. In the start search bar, simply type CMD to open a command prompt and type node --version. As you can see, we have the version number, which means Node should be installed correctly. We can also type npm for node package manager -- version. And we have the version number of node package manager, which we will need in the future in order to add dependencies to both our server side and our React front end. With Node installed, we'll begin installing Atom. We'll close this and go back to our browser. Search for Atom. We want the atom.io website and download. I've already downloaded this. Once you have downloaded it, just go back to your downloads folder and install. We'll close this for now. Go back to the search bar, type cmd and open a command prompt again. And we'll check for the version number by typing atom -- version. And Atom should be installed globally. We'll move on to the next step of initializing a Node.js project. In File Explorer, go to the directory where you want to create your project. I'll just be creating it in Documents. Create a new folder and call it anything you wish to name your project. I'll be calling it React Boilerplate. And open that folder. I'll copy this directory address, open another command prompt, and type cd for change directory, and then paste what I've just copied. And we are now located within the folder that we just created. We can type atom space full stop to open Atom within that directory. This is the directory we just created, which is empty. We'll go back to command prompt to initialize a Node.js project by typing npm init. This will allow you to name your project and configure it, but I'm just going to hit enter all the way through for now. We can always update it later. Just hit yes, or type Y for yes. Now back in Atom, we now have a package.json file which we can open. As you can see, a lot of the fields that were defined in the setup are located here. We can update name, version number, and description, but what we are going to be focusing mainly on are main scripts. We are also going to add dependencies and dev dependencies. We can add dependencies by typing within double quotes dependencies, and we'll just create a set of curly braces for now. Also, don't forget to add a comma at the end to separate dependencies from author. And we'll add dev dependencies also. Now we want to update main to point to server.js. We haven't created the server.js file yet, but we will in the next step. Creating a server isn't 100% necessary for a very simple Create React app, but it will make it easier for deployment and for further development. of apps that require a backend. We'll create a new file called server.js. We need to import a dependency called express, which we haven't added to our list of dependencies at the moment, but we'll get to that in a minute. Const express equals require express. This will just bring express into this file. We want to create an instance of express which we'll call app. We want to set a port number within a variable which we'll call port. And we'll set the number to 5000. And then we want to call app.listen. We'll add the port number, and then we'll create an arrow function which will log the port number that the server has started on. Right here we can use backticks, which should be located under your escape key. We'll type server started on port. Now, as we've used backticks rather than quotes, we can type $, curly braces, and then add the variable that stores our port number in. We'll save this. Now we still have to add express as a dependency, so we can go back to package.json. We'll save this as well. We could type the packages we require here as well as a version number, but to get the latest version number we can copy the full path of our main directory, open another command prompt, cmd, and cd change directory into that folder. Then we can type npm install whatever dependencies we require. We need express, with express installed, we now have it added to our package.json file. We also need to install a couple of dev dependencies. We need NodeMon, which is a tool that will allow us to automatically restart the server whenever there's a change to the file directory. We can type npm install flag capital D for development NodeMon. And as you can see, under dev dependencies, we now have NodeMon. We have a folder called Node Modules, which stores a whole lot of different packages and dependencies, including the ones we've just added: Express, NodeMon. Now we need to add a script in order to start our server, And we also want to utilize nodemon in order to reset the server every time it detects a change in the file directory. We'll type comma and we'll call this script server, colon. We want to call nodemon and then server. We'll save this. We'll go back to our command prompt and we'll type node package manager npm run and then the name of the script we just created. And as you can see, the message we've created here is now displaying the port number. We can turn off the server for now by hitting Control-C and terminate. With the server up and running, we can now focus on creating our front end, which will utilize the create React app command. Let's get started with creating our front end by running the create React app command. We'll go back to command prompt, cmd, and we'll make sure we're back into our React boilerplate folder. cd. We want to run the command npx, which stands for node package execution, and then the command itself, create React app, and then we want to specify the file we want to create in order to store our front end. In this case, we'll call it client. We'll hit enter. The installation does take a while, but once it's complete, you'll see that we now have a new folder called client, which will store our front end. We have another node modules folder, which will store the modules specific for the package.json file within the React app itself. This also has dependencies and scripts. We have a source folder, which is what we'll be concentrating on when we are editing our code. And we can also test to make sure everything is running correctly within our front end by going back to command prompt. We want to change directory cd into the client folder that we just created, and then we can run the script start. All we have to do to run this script is type npm start. This should open a browser to display our React front end. We'll close the browser down for now. We can also close this by hitting Control-C and select Y to terminate. We now need to configure our server.js file, which is located in our main folder. We have to configure the client to run when we activate the server as well. So in our main folder, we'll go back to the package.json file, and within dev dependencies, we need to add another package called concurrently. Concurrently runs multiple commands at the same time. So back in command prompt, We are now in the React boilerplate / client folder. We need to go back one step, so we'll type cd change directory // // That brought us back one directory. We need to utilize this as a dev dependency, so we will run npm install flag D concurrently and hit enter. Back in our package.json file, you can see our dev dependencies have been updated to include concurrently. Within scripts, we need to add a couple of more scripts. We'll begin by naming a script called dev. Separate this with a colon. We'll use concurrently to run the command npm run server. Just remember to get this formatting correct. We need a backslash, a double quote, the command, a backslash, and a double quote in order to separate it from the second command that we'll be running. This command will run node package manager run server, which will in turn run this command nodemon server, which will start our server. For the second command, we want to run npm run client. Again, make sure you have the formatting correct. We also have to add the client script, which we will do now. We'll add this here, give it the name client, colon. Now what we want to do is run npm start, but within the client's package.json. So we'll need to navigate to this package.json file in order to determine what script is required. We'll type npm start but we'll also want to prefix the file that we want to start at with client. So basically this will search for the client folder and then it'll go to the package.json file and then run the start script. I've also made a typo here. I'll just correct that. We also need to separate the scripts with a comma. We can save that. We'll close the package.json file within the client folder. Now we can test our scripts. We are in the correct directory where we need to be. We'll type npm run dev, which will run the dev script, which will in turn run the server script, which will start our server, and also the client script, which will change directories and then run the script within the package.json file for that directory. We've started our server. And And we've also started our front end, so everything appears to be working correctly. We'll keep the browser running this time, as well as our server. As long as we don't cancel this, our server will also be up and running. With both our server and front end set up, we can now start coding our front end. We'll go back to Atom. We'll just begin with a few basic changes. In the client folder, we want to locate the source folder and open the app.js file. We'll delete the header. We'll save and we'll go back to the browser. And as you can see, there's nothing displayed here because the server has updated due to the file change, and we've deleted all the content within the header that was displayed previously. Within our source folder, we'll create a new folder and we'll call this components. Within the components folder, we'll create another folder and we'll call this demo with a capital D. Within the demo folder, we'll create a new file and we'll call this index.js. This will be a very simple functional component. So we will import React from React. We will define our component, which will be an arrow function. And we want to return the JSX that we wish to be displayed, which will be a div and we'll put a heading 1 as well. Then we want to export the demo component. Export default, then the name of our component. We'll go back to the app.js file. We need to import demo from the location where demo is stored, which is components demo. So we can do that by putting a single full stop, a / components, and then / demo. Make sure you get the capital D. Now we don't need to add the index.js here because React will automatically seek out the index.js file to display. Then all we need to do is include our component in this return statement. Now hopefully when we go back to our browser, we'll see that we have now included the new component we just created. With both our server and our React front end up and running, we can now start to prepare to deploy it on Heroku. First, we need to set up Git and create a repository locally. Back at our code, we can minimize the client folder And in our main folder, we want to create a readme.md file. Readme should be in uppercase. We'll just write basic boilerplate code for the beginning of a MERN application and save that. Now we have to download Git, so we'll go back to our browser. We can type Git and download the file you require for your operating system. Again, I've already downloaded the file, so once you've done the same, go to install. I just leave all the settings as is. I'll be using Atom as the default editor. We'll check to make sure we have Git installed globally by git --version, and we have the version number displayed, so we should be good to go. We want to go back to our main project folder. And within the command prompt, we'll cd into that directory and then type git init. Now we have a new Git repository initialized. Before we go any further, we should add a git ignore file in order to ignore the node modules folders in both the client and the main folder. We'll right click on our main directory, new file, full stop git ignore, and within this we'll type node modules with a / at the end, which will ignore this file, and we'll also include the client / node modules folder. We'll save, and now we will create a GitHub account by going to our browser and going to github.com or searching GitHub. Simply sign up for a free GitHub account. You'll need an email address, but that's about it. I won't run you through the process because it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you have your account, just sign in. We need to create a new repository, so we'll just hit create repository. And we can just name this the same as we've named our project in the past. You can give it a description. We'll keep it as a public repository, and we'll just ignore everything here for the minute. And you'll be given a set of instructions of how to push your code from your local repository onto your GitHub repository. We need to go back to our command line, make sure we're in our project directory, and within our local repository we need to add all the code that we've created so far, except for that which will be ignored. We'll type the command git add and then a full stop, which will add all of the code that we've created into the repository, ready to be committed. With all the code added, we can type git status to view all of the code that we've added ready to commit. As you can see, there's no code module folders, which is good because that would take up a lot of space. We then need to commit the added code to our repository, so we'll type git commit with a flag M for message, and then add whatever message we wish to include. I'll just write first commit. Hitting enter will commit all the added code. Now we can go back to GitHub. We've initialized Git. We've added a README file. We've committed our first commit locally. We'll change the branch to main. Git branch, capital M, main. We can reference our GitHub repository. I'll simply copy and paste this command and hit enter. And now we can hopefully push our code onto our GitHub repository. Git push flag u origin main. I'm just going to close this sign in right here and add my username and password here to log into GitHub. With that complete, we can go back to GitHub. We can click here, and within our React Boilerplate repository, we now have all the code we've created. Now we'll go and create our Heroku account. We'll search for Heroku. We want Heroku.com. And just go through the sign up process. I've already got a file, so I'll just log in. Once you are logged in, go to create new app. The app name, we'll just use the same name, but we may have to tweak it a little bit in order for us to not have a duplicate app name as somebody else. We'll leave the region as United States and we'll create the app. The deployment method we'll be using will be the Heroku command line interface deployment method. And like GitHub, we have instructions here. First, we need to download and install Heroku command line interface. I've already got the file downloaded. Just run through the install process. I'll just leave all the settings as is. With the install complete, we'll again test this out to make sure we have it installed globally. We can test it out within any directory. We'll just be in our main project directory and we'll type Heroku -- version. And it looks like it installed successfully. Now we'll prepare our code for deployment. We need to go back to our server to update that. We first need to determine whether or not our app is in production. So we'll create an if statement. If process .env .node env is equal to production, then we'll run the following code. I'm not entirely sure what happens on the Heroku end when we deploy, but I do know that this code works, and I'll explain it as best I can. We'll set a static folder by using our instance of Express, which is called app. Use express.static, then client/build. I believe once we've deployed, the app will be ejected and a build folder will be created within the client folder. So that'll direct us to that, so we can serve our static assets. We also need to use our instance of Express to get all routes. All routes will be indicated with an asterisk. Then we need an arrow function with the parameters request and response. REQ, RES. We need to access res.send file. Then path. Now path isn't defined yet, but we can add it up here by just requiring it, importing it. I believe this comes with a initialized Node project, so you don't have to go to your package.json files and add it to your dependencies. So path resolve, we need to access the directory name as defined within Heroku. That's just a variable. Then we need to access the client folder, then the build folder, the index, and then the index.html file. We also have to have the ability to redefine the port once we've deployed to Heroku. If we have deployed to Heroku, the process.env.port variable will be set. But if it's not, if we haven't deployed to Heroku and this variable isn't set, then we'll default to 5000. So we'll just add those there as an OR statement. So once we've deployed to Heroku, it'll be listening on that defined port, and then we'll display the port number within the logs. We'll save this, and now all we have to do is go back to our package.json file and redefine and define another script. This will be called Heroku post build. We need to access and set to false the node package manager config production variable, all uppercase. This will be false. And then we need to run a couple of commands with node package manager. The first one will be npm install prefix client. So this will go to the client directory and install all of our dependencies required to run the app on Heroku. And with a double ampersand, we'll also add the command node package manager run build with the prefix of client, and we'll save this as well. So again, we'll be setting this variable to false. We'll run the first command, which will install our dependencies within the client folder, and then we'll build the client's front end by running this script. Hopefully that is all we need to be able to deploy to Heroku successfully. We'll go back to our instructions. We have Heroku command line interface installed. We'll log into Heroku now. So open a command prompt, cmd, enter. Heroku login. We'll log in and then go back to our command line. We have successfully logged in. We need to remember to go back to our main file, copy the full path, change directory to our main file. We've already initialized our local Git repository. We can copy and paste this to reference our Heroku repository. Just paste that into the command line. That looks like it's successfully been updated. Now, again, we need to git add all of our changes. Let's just double check to make sure we've got all of our files saved. We can run git status. We've modified server. It should also say you've modified package.json, but I think I've deleted and rewritten the code, so it hasn't noticed any changes, so we should be okay. We then need to git commit to our local repository with a message ready for deployment. We'll commit that. We need to use double quotes. Back to our Heroku instructions. Now we are actually in our main branch. We're not in the master branch, so rather than typing what it says to type here, git push Heroku master, we need to write git push Heroku main. And with a bit of luck, this will deploy to Heroku successfully. Deployment says it's been done. We'll go back to Heroku in our browser. We'll go up to the top and click Open App. And as you can see, we're successfully deployed to Heroku. This is the bulk of the hassle out of the way. It's not much to look at, but we have got a lot achieved with displaying this very simple component, because we're not only running a React front end, but we're also running our server, which makes development so much more easy when we do move into more MERN stack based web applications and accessing APIs with Express and things of that nature. We can go a bit further just to prove everything's working correctly. We'll go to source. We'll go back to our demo component. And we'll just type success. We'll save this. We'll go back to our command prompt. We'll add that change to our repository, our local repository. Git add all, git status. We've modified the demo component. We'll commit this, git commit, flag M for message, double quotes. We'll just type success. Then we can git push Heroku main. Deployment done. Back to Heroku. We may be able to just reset the app here. And we do have success. Again, it doesn't seem like much, but a lot of the pains and hassles have been sorted out with this method of getting an app up and running online. And from here, we'll start implementing a MongoDB database. in future tutorials, we'll implement Sass for CSS styling and React for state management. And then we can actually get into developing substantial apps. We should also commit our local repository to our GitHub repository. We'll go back to GitHub. A good reference point will be the client, source, component demo index. As you can see, we've not updated the text within the h1 tags, but we do have it committed to our local repository. So if we run the command git push flag u origin main, remember not master, main, we'll go back to our code. We'll refresh this, and we've successfully updated our code.